The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So who'd have thought that the sports weekend would be rescued by a tennis match? It was like 40, almost 50 years ago when dinosaurs like Borg and McEnroe and Connors roamed the earth. A classic yesterday in the French Open final between two relative newcomers. How would the world live with the passing of the big three? Well, looks like it's living pretty fine. That was a heck of a match yesterday. We will get into that. NBA Finals script last night played out pretty much like most thought it would for all four games. Indiana stole one, so they go home now with a chance to go up 2-1. But also, if they lose, I think you got to put Oklahoma City in the driver's seat. And with what they did last night, it was pretty much textbook Oklahoma City, a team that now has 80 wins, including the postseason, won 68 during the regular season. They're not just a great offensive team with the MVP of the league and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They play great defense, as they did last night. And Indiana, although they didn't score very much in game one, they did manage to win, and they won off a great shot from Therese Halliburton. Well, Halliburton, as he's done from time to time in the postseason, kind of disappears. It wasn't awful last night, but in order for Indiana to be competitive in this series, he has to be great. And you can't tell everything from a box score, but you can't have 17 points from Therese Halliburton have a chance to win. 7 of 13. And again, you also look at how many shots he took, not just the shots that he made, but he only took 13 shots. That's not enough. Didn't get to the free throw line. That's often indicative of passive play. Had only one foul. That's not going to get it done. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but it's amazing how things shift from game to game. Game one, oh yeah, Therese Halliburton, you got him, man. Whoa, look out. He finds a way to beat you. And now it's like, what did he do? He hit one shot. Yeah, it was a big shot, but he hit one shot. It's just the nature of the way things play out in the NBA Finals. Some react, Tim Legler off the Thunder's dominating performance last night, 123-107. They were up 18 at the half, and Indiana really never got back into the game. That was the point. Although, because of what Indiana has done in the postseason, there's a tendency to say, should I turn it off and go to bed, or could we see what we saw in game one where they come from 15 down in the fourth quarter and win? Wasn't happening last night. Here's Tim Legler with Scott Van Pelt on what he saw from courtside.
This is an 80-win team. This has been the best team in the NBA all year. There's no way in God's green earth they're not winning this game tonight, and they played that way. What did you see?
Did feel that way to me, and I think what I saw tonight was the team that I watched all year with great offensive balance. I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander basically carried this team in the first game offensively. It felt like everything they got had to be a finish by him, a shot by him at the end of possessions. Very little movement on the perimeter around him, very little shot comfortability around him. I saw a totally different team tonight, and I really thought the key – couple of their guys they had off the bench, Alex Caruso and Wiggins, those two guys sensational. 38 points between them, and they just shot the ball in a relaxed mode. But their movement around Shai was what I noticed more than anything else. Look, Shai's going to collapse the defense over and over. He did it again tonight. The difference was when he did it tonight, if he didn't have a shot, the way that Oklahoma City continued to occupy open spaces, move the ball, shoot the ball with confidence in a relaxed state, that to me was the difference. I thought their offense let them down more than anything in game one.
And their defense, which we know is as advertised, what was it, chase and rake, and we talked about how they're cruel and they break other teams' hearts. But Indiana, when they possessed the ball game one, they made shots. They just turned it over too much early. In this game, they held them under 35% shooting in the first half. Was there a difference in terms of what Oklahoma City did on defense tonight?
I think a couple things. I think, first of all, there was definitely much more intent on closing out to open spaces on the perimeter. The three-point differential in this series is going to be huge. Game one, Indiana made a bunch late. They ended up with a +7 there. That's 21 points additional from the three-point line. This game was even, and I think a lot of that had to do with the way Oklahoma City was closing out to the three-point line, and then some of it, as we often talk about, Tyrese Halliburton was fairly passive in this game. He just didn't really play like his hair's on fire, and that's when they're at their best, when he has momentum up the floor, when he's getting those brush screens at half court and immediately getting into the gut of the defense and hunting his own offense. He didn't do a whole lot of that. He had a little bit of a spurt in the early fourth quarter, but by then you're talking about a 20-point game. So I think some of it's self-inflicted, but no doubt you saw the league's #1 defense on display tonight across the board. They defend the paint, they defend the three, they defend transition. You saw it all out of Oklahoma City.
And this Pacer team has demonstrated over and over again a rare, maybe unique capacity to erase double-digit deficits, but you fall behind 20-something to a desperate team on their home floor. They're not going to fall down 0-2. They did not tonight.
That's Tim Legler with Scott Van Pelt. The point he made about the bench points for Oklahoma City, we have Aaron Wiggins and Alex Caruso combining for 38. Not just that, they combined for 38 on only 22 shots. Each of them 6 of 11 from the field, which means there were 12 of 22. You'd take that 100 times out of 100 from two bench players, and then you get the requisite 34 points from the MVP of the league, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, with 34. You're not going to be able to overcome that, and they weren't. I mean, the game was never close. It was never in doubt. Gilgeous-Alexander joined Scott Van Pelt after it was over, and he's not getting cocky at this point, but you got to figure with game one where it comes down to a miracle shot by Indiana, not miracle shot, but an incredible ending and an incredible comeback for a team that fell asleep, and then you get a dominating performance like you got in game two. You got to feel pretty confident as the series shifts to Indiana with a chance to come home and wrap up the series in 5, or even if it goes 7, you're going to be at home, and home court makes a hell of a difference for them. This was, again, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with Scott Van Pelt.
I don't believe that we can manufacture desperation in life. It has to be genuine.
Absolutely.
Is it fair to say, given the opponent and what happened late in game one, that this was a desperate situation, a game you could not afford to lose?
Absolutely. It's clear as day. Like, same thing happened in the Denver series. It's hard to win a series losing both at home. It's just hard. You set yourself back so much, and we knew that going into the game. The trick is trying to manufacture that desperation when it's not organic.
That's well said.
Yeah. But, yeah, we had one goal in mind tonight, and that was to get a W, and we did so.
The desperation that you spoke of, that was evident, but because you had gone through it with Denver, I wonder how much you were able just to remember, all right, damn near the same thing happened in that series, and we were able to come out on the other end of it. How do you make 48 hours productive? It's kind of a long wait. What does go into those moments of looking at film and being prepared for tonight and coming out with the aggression that we saw?
Yeah, I think the fire and the energy comes naturally. Now you just have to do a really good job of trying to stay in the moment and just figure out how to get better for the next game.
How about this building's ability? We just heard Rick Carlisle mention that this place is as advertised. This is the first time I've been here. He said he felt they took it to another level. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. They do an amazing job, and every time it feels like it's the loudest it's ever been, they just keep going louder every game. But yeah, we besides the energy that comes so naturally in this building, especially in a desperate game, you just try to find a way to get better. And that's the main goal. Like, as long as you keep getting better through your experiences, you give yourself a chance.
Shai, you've spent so much time throughout this postseason playing not just from ahead, but comfortably ahead. But given the team you're playing and the capacity to come back that they've demonstrated over and over again, is there any point in this second half where the number is high enough that you feel like, all right, we're probably okay tonight?
No. Probably when it was like 15 with a minute left. This late in the season, like, you don't want to take anything for granted. Now, obviously, they have the track record of doing some miraculous things late game, and we learned that firsthand last game. So those moments, we kind of don't even give ourselves a chance to think that.
Understood.
With the goal at mind and the team that we're playing against, they're a really good basketball team. You don't make it this far without being a really good basketball team, and we know that. And we learned that the hard way game one.
Jets, a very, very talented young man.
Absolutely.
And he is still a young man who missed a significant amount of time this season with an injury. What's the message that you all put in his ear over the last couple of days to take game one, put it in the rear view, and be the guy we saw tonight? Because from the jump, he was different.
The special thing about Chet is nobody said anything to him.
Is that right?
Yeah. He's such a competitor, and he gets lost in the competition, and that's when he's the best version of himself now. He's going to go out there and make mistakes just like the rest of us. But his intentions, his intangibles, his skill set, and the things you just can't teach that he does on the basketball court, well, they'll take over as long as he continues to have that right mindset, which he does 99.999% of the time. And yeah, you don't have to worry about Chet. He's going to be that guy.
Interesting. Through the years doing this, I always look at the guys looking at this, and I'm like, what are they looking at? Right now what I'm looking at is I'm looking at Wiggins and I'm looking at Caruso. 38 off the bench.
Yep.
The ability for them to contribute that significantly tonight, how important were their contributions to the overall victory?
Yeah, very. They always are. We are the team we are because of our depth and because of the punches that we can throw through 10, 11 men. Like, that's what makes it special. That's what makes us this historic defense, this historic season that we've had so far. We have guys that understand the goal in mind on both ends of the floor, and we can sit down, take breaks, and it doesn't drop off, and they did a great job tonight.
I'm interested in your perspective, the same thing I asked Tyrese the other night. This is 2 games in now. It's the finals. Anything feel different about what it is to you as you play? I mean, the numbers look like they always look, but I'm just interested in what you're processing. You're a human being, and these are the finals.
Absolutely. The losses hurt a little bit more, for sure. But I've tried to just tell myself, as much as you can, just enjoy the process and enjoy the moment.
Are you?
Absolutely. It's been amazing. It's been everything I dreamed it to be. It's been, it's hard to even put into words and wrap my head around. It's been so fun. It's the best stage of basketball ever, of all time. And we get the opportunity to play in that. And that's how I try to view it. I try to view it as so many people die for this opportunity, and I have my whole entire life, and now I'm finally here. So just as much as I can, enjoy it, but keep that competitive fire.
I asked Aaron about it when he sat down with me. We're going to bring that interview to folks a little bit later in the show, and he said, yeah, I felt it when I took that heat check and he missed the rim. You know, he said he was ready to light this place on fire, but I think we have to remind ourselves that, those of us that are lucky enough to cover this, and this is our job. It's your job, too, but you've lived your whole lives waiting to be out there and to process it in real time and still compete. I guess that's the balancing act, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a crazy moment. So many emotions behind it, and they're natural. You can't get rid of them, no matter what.
Why would you want to?
Exactly. But once you get out there, it's like you feel it in the air. It's just basketball, and it's just you and your crew competing against another crew. And the crews are very good at this stage.
It's different than in the park. Sure, it's a little high level.
The crews are very good, but at the end of the day, it's competition, and you try to go out there and win.
What do you imagine it feels like Wednesday when you get to another building where they're cheering for the other squad?
Yeah, very, very, very fun. A lot of boos. I'm sure they'll be pretty fast in their building, pretty comfortable. So, we're going to have to be really good if we want to go down there and win.
Yeah, in fact, this is not a surprise. That was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with Scott Van Pelt, and Scott mentioned his fellow Terp, Aaron Wiggins, with the 18 off the bench. The game being in Indianapolis, this is the first finals they've had there in 25 years. And Rick Carlisle, who's been there twice now, this is his second go-round in Indiana. He's played in Boston. He knows what the Garden is like when it's insane. He knows what it's like playing in the old Forum with the Lakers. He's pulling a bit of a Joe Gibbs here. You know, Joe Gibbs, hey, we got to have all our fans out there at RFK Stadium. We got to have everybody out there. He's sort of doing that as they get ready to head there on Wednesday night.
I thought the atmosphere, I thought their crowd was exceptionally great. And so as we go home, we're going to need our crowd to be just like this crowd was. I mean, these fans took it to another level tonight, and that's how Gainbridge is going to have to be, for us to have a chance to be successful.
Yeah, well, they've also got to get more from Halliburton. That's clear. The starting five were all in double figures, but their star has to match the star of Oklahoma City, who's played big. I mean, Carlisle said this. He said you might as well chalk up 34 for SGA before he gets off the plane. I mean, that's pretty much what you can count on. He's going to get his. You can't have, Alex Caruso with 20. You can't have Wiggins with 18. Chet Holmgren played a hell of a game last night. He had 15 points, and he also had 6 rebounds. They're getting contributions all around. They're a deeper team. They're a better defensive team. And if Indiana is going to have a chance in this series, they have to play at a much higher level than they played last night. Now, there's a natural letdown, of course, when you got one in the bank, because you go on the road to start the playoffs with the other team with home court advantage. If you can get out of there taking one of the two, that's great. But they had a chance to step on their neck last night. If as SGA said, it's very difficult to win a series if you lose the first 2 at home. And Indiana, with any chance to do that last night, came up small, and that can't happen on Wednesday night. Coming up, I'll get to the tennis. I'll tell you my story of how I consumed it. If you sat for all 5.5 hours, Guy Gesund, good for you. But it is one of the classic finals that have ever been played in a Grand Slam. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So, let me explain how I watched the tennis yesterday. I used to be a huge tennis fan. I got caught up in the tennis boom back in the 70s. In those days, sometimes you had to wait an hour to get on a public court. We didn't have a garage in the house. Okay, I'll give you that. But I lived a half a block from pool and tennis courts, and there were 2 tennis courts, and they were almost always in use. You had to sign up for them. And sometimes there'd be fights over, somebody playing a little bit longer than they were signed up for. It was crazy. Now you can walk on any time on any public court, whatever time you want to do it. They're always open. So it's changed a lot. But the sport survives. It doesn't get the television ratings that it did in those days, but nothing does. I mean, everything is watered down. So people were wondering how tennis would go on after the moving on of the big 3, which was inevitable that at some point, tennis was going to have to move on from Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic is still playing, and he made the semifinals, but, clearly he's on his way out. Well, we got it now. I mean, this Alcaraz-Sinner matchup is going to be huge for a long, long time. And they have played some great matches already. They're young guys, each 21 and 22. So anyway, I did not watch the Good Night and Good Luck that I wanted to watch on CNN on Saturday night because the Belmont I knew was going to bleed into 7 o'clock, and the play began at 7, and I didn't want to miss any of it, so I DVR'd it. And knew that I was going to watch it yesterday. I didn't know exactly what time, but I came downstairs, and my wife was watching the tennis, and she says, "Oh yeah, it's 2-0 in sets." I go, "Okay, well this is basically over. Looks like Sinner, the number 1 seed, is going to take care of business, and he's going to beat Alcaraz, and they'll make quick work of it and move on." So I go downstairs. I watch the entire Good Night and Good Luck, which was outstanding, by the way. Love the movie 20 years ago where George Clooney played Fred W. Friendly, who was the producer of the show. The Edward R. Murrow part was not played by George Clooney in the movie. He played Friendly. It was played by David Strathorn, I think, or Strath, I forget his name. But he looked a lot more like Murrow, not as dashing as Clooney. But still, very good play, and it was incredible that they pulled off something like that because it's meant to be shown on stage, not on television. But clearly they had done their work setting up. They knew the scenes, and they knew how to handle everything, and it was really well done. Anyway, I watched the whole thing. There's that, which goes close to 2 hours, and then there's sort of like a post-game hosted by Anderson Cooper. And then my wife says it's gone to the 5th set. So I go, whoa! So I tune over and I watch like the second half of the 5th set, which was just tremendous. And it, of course, went to a tiebreaker. And, of course, it was classic. There were incredible shots that were made by both players. And it was just a test of wills, which, brings up the question, is this the greatest final of all time? Now, for 45 years, I think it's been pretty well established or pretty well agreed upon by tennis people that the best of the finals was the 1980 Wimbledon singles final between John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg, who was the 4-time defending champion. He was only 25 years old. McEnroe was, I guess, 21 or 22. Went 3 hours and 53 minutes. I mean, it was an hour and a half less than this. McEnroe was beaten 1-6. He won the first set, 7-5, 6-3. The fourth set went to a tiebreaker, which was won by McEnroe 18-16, only to have Borg win the match and hold serve and win 8-6. McEnroe saved 7 championship points, but ultimately he lost to Borg in what has been regarded as the greatest of all time, though Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal in 2008. Now, that was a crazy one because they kept having rain delays. That didn't finish up until late at night, but that was a classic as well. But in the fourth set tiebreaker, which lasted 20 minutes, McEnroe saved 5 championship points. The tiebreaker was later described by one reporter as the most riveting episode in the sport's history, and I think people remember that. But this is now a contender, and certainly in the modern era, you can't do better than this. Alcaraz, who seemed to be on his way out, saved several match points in this and was able to, like an hour and a half after facing a match point, which he saved, was able to win the match and then went on with the TNT crew, which included John McEnroe and Jim Courier.
Do you have any energy left to talk to us right now?
Well, I just I don't know where I'm gonna find the energy to have more interviews, but it's great to speak to you guys. I mean, I'm just excited about everything. Honestly, I can't believe I'm standing here talking to you guys. So I'm just really happy. I'm proud about everything.
Carlos, it's John McEnroe here. 2 things. First, thank you for saying that I look 40 years old the other day. I much appreciate that. And thank you, as an ex-tennis player, for what you just did on that tennis court. There were so many times where it looked like you were down and out. Even in the end, it looked like maybe Jannik would turn the tide. Take us through that match. You were down 2 sets of break, 5-3, love 40. We could go on and on. Tell me how you saw it.
John, honestly, I don't know what I did. Honestly, I don't know what happened. 5-3 in the fourth, low 40. I didn't thought about anything else. I was just being going point after point and putting my heart into it and giving my all energy into it as well. Just I try not to give up. Just we were in a final of a Grand Slam. It wasn't time to be afraid. It wasn't time to give up. I just tried to fight until the last ball. Really happy to save that much ball, and I knew that the 7-5-4 serving for him, it wasn't easy because closing the matches it's always tough, even tougher when you had 3 match ball and you didn't make it. So just try to put my heart into it, trying to go point after point, and after all, in the first set playing such a great tennis. I hope the people enjoy it as well. I think it was a really pretty good match to enjoy. So thank you.
Carlos, you've given us so many great moments already. You're so young. Where does this match rank amongst all the matches you've played at the majors? You've won 5 of them so far.
Well, I'm gonna put it the first one. I think this match is the first match that I came back from 2 sets to love down, and I think it was in in a better location than the. Roland Garros final against the number 1 of the world, Jannik. I think it was the perfect location to come back from 2 sets to low down. So I think that this is the best match that I've played in a Grand Slam history. In my career. So the best Grand Slam match in my career. So I'm just really proud and happy that this happened.
Carlos, a match like that, 5 hours, 29 minutes. It was truly incredible. Is that more difficult on your mind or your body?
Honestly, it was both. I mean, deal with the situations of the match. There were some situations in the match that my body felt like couldn't handle any, anymore. Cramps, low energy. So deal with all those situations in the mind is always difficult, But those moments it was a time to think positive. To think you're able to overcome those problems, to think that you're ready to play more hours, and to think that to believe it was to believe in yourself, and I think that was the key, that I believed in myself all the time.
Carlos Alcaraz, you got to go. We appreciate you. Where's the next tattoo going? Where are you putting it?
Say again.
Where's the next tattoo going? You got the Eiffel Tower last time.
I mean, I had to ask my father.
Okay.
But I told my father he's just going to be the first one. Probably the day. I mean, I had to discuss with him.
That is Carlos Alcaraz, who is 21 years old. I mean, he is an adult, but still young enough, I guess, to have to consult with his dad about the tattoos. And at 21, he's got 5 majors. Jannik Sinner, who's a year older, has 3. This is setting up to be a great rivalry for 10 years, maybe longer. And, the way tennis has changed so much, if you watch it now versus watching it 40, 50 years ago, Jimmy Connors played a power game. He played with the same racket I got for my bar mitzvah, which I have in the house somewhere. It's a T2000. It was made of steel. It had the hitting surface the size of a teacup saucer. Borg and McEnroe played with wooden rackets. These guys play with titanium rackets, and they hit the crap out of the ball. I mean, every shot is what used to be a slam winner. And they have taken this game to a different level. I know it's difficult because there's so many other things going on at a time when few things were televised. Tennis got a big audience, and it still gets enough of an audience that the networks are bidding on it. And TNT now has it. ESPN has, I guess, Wimbledon and some of the majors. But this was just such high level tennis. It wasn't just that it went 5 hours and 29 minutes. It's that at the end, shot after shot after shot was just tremendous. And Alcaraz talks about cramping. If you're watching this, Sinner is clearly running out of gas, though somehow mentally he managed to pull it together and break serve and send it to a tiebreaker. But Alcaraz, after being out there for 5.5 hours, didn't even look like he was sweating. It just, his hair was perfectly dry. I don't know what kind of shirt he was wearing. It was a white shirt, so you really couldn't see sweat stains. But it didn't even look like he was sweating. That was just an amazing sporting event, even if you're not much of a tennis fan, and even if you didn't sit there for 5.5 hours, as I did not. But if you watched all or some of it, you came away thinking, man, these are 2 guys who refuse to lose. That is competition. I saw some comps between the Thrilla and Manila. That was the 3rd fight between Ali and Frazier. Ali may have suffered permanent brain damage from that fight. Who knows, how much Joe Frazier suffered long-term from that. Fortunately, these guys are not the worse for wear for playing that. Could they get out and play a match today? Probably not. They left a lot on the court. But fortunately, it's not going to do any long-term damage to them. All right, to football and the expected signing that we had announced actually Thursday, not Friday. Usually these things are announced on Friday. But Aaron Rodgers is, in fact, signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He said, almost like magnanimously with Pat McAfee a few weeks ago, hey, I'll play for $10 million. Well, the base is $10 million. He's got like $13 million in bonus, and then if he reaches all the incentives, it's like $19 million. But the big thing is, it's a 1-year deal, and at 40 makes sense for the Steelers to do that. Although, does it make sense for them to sign a quarterback at the age of 40 when you don't really seem to have a long-term plan on that? Now their plan number 1 was to get Matt Stafford from the Rams. That didn't work out, and then Justin Fields, they wanted to re-sign him. That wasn't worked out. He wound up going to the Jets for seemingly a reasonable deal. It was like 2 years, $40 million. So Rodgers is it. He's choice number 3. and he's in Pittsburgh for 1 year. This is Albert Breer of SI.com on that with Dan Patrick.
It's a short-term fix, but it kind of kicks the can down the road that this is 1 year. And that's what still surprises me, that they're all in for 1 year.
So do you remember you and I sitting at the Super Bowl and we were talking about Matthew Stafford, and I brought up the Steelers as a potential suitor for him? And I think, it made some headlines and people were like, whoa, what do you mean like the Steelers would do that? I kind of had an inkling that they had this discussion internally. They were never bringing Russell Wilson back. And I think if they were bringing Justin Fields back, they wanted to continue working with him, but it wasn't necessarily going to be as the starter. And I really as I looked at their situation, and one of the reasons I use them as like the perfect suitor for Stafford applies to Rodgers too. They're so leveraged for right now. You know what I mean? And if you look at their roster, TJ Watt's turning 31, Minkah Fitzpatrick's turning 29, Cam Hayward's in the back end of his career, DK Metcalf, who they just acquired, is on his third contract now. Now he's not old, but he has been beat up, and again on his third contract. They really are in this spot where it's like if they want to win with the core that they've built, then it almost has to be right now. And yes, they're still chasing the mistake of taking Kenny Pickett in the first round. But the way I look at this is taking a quarterback in the first round wasn't going to solve anything this year with this group. I think the guys that you were looking at there were developmental at best. You were probably looking at all right, we can get the most out of this guy in 26 or 27. And that doesn't really help you with the core that you have right now. So if you wanted to get somebody for right now, I think the question becomes, do you want to try to hit a single or a double? And this is no affront to these guys, a Daniel Jones, trade for a Kirk Cousins, whatever it is. Or do you want to take a big swing for the fences? And I think that's what this is. It's like, if you want to win a Super Bowl with TJ Watt, if you want to win a Super Bowl with Minkah Fitzpatrick, if you want to win a Super Bowl with Cam Hayward, who's given your franchise so much over the years, how are you going to accomplish that? And there's a chance that, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt or the age shows or whatever it is. So you might take that big swing and miss, but he's also got the best chance of putting one over the fence for you, And so I think that's sort of the way the Steelers viewed this is, with this core, with this short window that they have left with this core of players, they couldn't swing for a single or a double. They had to swing for the fences.
And you know what? That makes sense. And if you look at the comp with Brett Favre, and their careers now are panning out to be so similar in that Rodgers played 15 years with the Vikings, though 3 of those were spent sitting behind Brett Favre. Then he goes to the Jets, and while Favre played only 1 year with the Jets, realistically, Rodgers did too, because his first year with the Jets lasted only 4 plays. So 1 year with the Jets, and then he moves on. Well, remember what happened when Brett Favre went to his third team. He stayed a year too long in Minnesota. The last year didn't work out at all, but the first year did. And had he not thrown a late interception, he would have gotten the Vikings to the Super Bowl. He just was too much Brett Favre, the gunslinger. There was really no reason to do that. Now, he was playing on a bad ankle, and he would have been compromised if he made it to the Super Bowl. But with the 2 weeks, he might have been able to get himself ready to go. But it is possible. You never know how this is going to play out. And like Breer said, they got some veteran players. It's pie in the sky, and Rodgers may not be able to do it at this point. But what Breer is saying, if you're going to go for it for 1 year, why not go for it with a Hall of Famer, and a Hall of Famer at a reasonable price? He's going to be playing for far less than top quarterbacks make. Is he still a top quarterback? Well, we're going to find out. Minicamp starts tomorrow, mandatory minicamp for the Pittsburgh Steelers, as it does here for the Washington Commanders. So this came down Friday night, and these are one of those stories that when they happen, people don't pay as much attention. It's been expected for some time that there was going to be this settlement, this $2.8 billion settlement approved, and it means now that schools can essentially pay their athletes' salaries as part of the settlement. Schools that opt into it, because you get money out of it, $2.8 billion, they'll be able to share up to $20.5 million with their athletes next year, starting July 1st. You get another year of this anarchy, which is going on now in college sports with, reports of quarterbacks making $4 million a year and $40 million payrolls and all that. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that's going to happen with all this. The non-revenue sports are going to get crushed in this because George has already said this. They're looking at the $20.5 million. They go, okay, great. $13.5 million for football, $2.7 to men's basketball, $900,000 to women's basketball, $900,000 to athletes in the remaining sports, and about $2.5 million in new scholarships. That's it. Most of the money is going to football. And this is why Kevin Willard left Maryland, because if you got $20.5 million per school and you go to Villanova where they don't have a football team or they don't have what they used to call Division 1A, maybe it's called FCS now or FBS, I'm confused, but it's the highest of the high. They don't have that. So most of his money most of the money from Villanova is going to go to basketball. That's why he went there. That's why it's worked that way. So what does it mean for the non-revenue sports? Not good. Not good. There's an Associated Press story here. It talks about an athlete by the name of Jake Rimmel. Jake Rimmel, and he was cut this past fall from the Virginia Tech cross-country team along with several other walk-ons. The topic held up the House case for weeks as the judge basically forced schools to give athletes cut in anticipation of approval a chance to play. So in other words, he was on the roster limit cut was what it was. He wasn't on scholarship, and I don't even know how much scholarship money is available for cross-country at Virginia Tech, maybe a little bit. But he was not even allowed to be on the team as a walk-on because they had a roster limit, and the courts were looking at this saying, well, maybe we should grandfather these guys in. So he packed up and he moved back to his parents' house in Purcellville. For the past 6 months, he's held on to the hope that maybe he could come back. News that the settlement has been approved has now sent him looking for details, according to this AP story. I didn't see much about roster limits. Everybody wants to talk about NIL and the revenue sharing. I mean, that's definitely a big piece of it, but I didn't see anything about roster limits, and that's obviously my biggest concern. So he's still got questions. The non-revenue sports certainly have questions, and as you can look at this breakdown from Georgia, where most of the money goes to football, which makes sense because that's where most of the money comes from in the television contract. The second most amount of money goes to basketball, where they also get money. And then here's a few little crumbs here for the rest of you. I think what this is going to lead to for the non-revenue sports is something that has to happen because you can't, with no money going to these sports, you can't fly the Maryland volleyball team to Oregon to play a game. I know they're competing in the Big Ten, but there has to be, for the non-revenue sports, something that makes sense. So they need to be in a league with like Howard and George Washington and Georgetown and, maybe Virginia Tech, places that you could travel by bus, maybe an occasional plane trip. You can play against Penn State, things like that. But it just isn't economically. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to have the basketball and football teams flying all over the country like that. But money talks, and everybody has consolidated into these power conferences. So it is what it is. But that's where it's going. And as far as what the NCAA used to legislate for all sports, Paul Feinbaum on ESPN Saturday morning, hours after this settlement was announced, said, basically, forget about it.
I couldn't help but think back about 10 years ago when Mark Emmert, then the president of the NCAA, essentially said college athletes will be paid over my dead body. He's still alive, but the NCAA is dead. It may still be in existence. We're still having tournaments such as the Women's World Series and the men's baseball. But the NCAA, as we know it, is gone. They literally have no jurisdiction whatsoever other than to be tournament directors. And this was supposed to level the playing field. Everybody pays the same into the kitty and then divvies it up. But it will do anything but. The big will get bigger and the small schools will simply slip away, other than maybe in basketball-only conferences that can use all that money for basketball, as opposed to like at Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, where they have to split up $20.5 million.
If we get the big getting bigger and the small slipping away, put on your prognostication hat. What will major college sports look like, say, in, 10, 15 years?
it will look a little bit like the NCAA basketball tournament this year, where the mid-majors, where we had all those great upsets, the Butlers of the past, and so many incredible stories, the Valpos, they're going to be gone. It's going to be the big schools on top. The rest of the college athletics is going to suffer. And what was really interesting, Jay, I heard Pete Thamel earlier announce that there's going to be a new director of enforcement, so to speak, this ex-Major League Baseball executive who was a former U.S. attorney. Well, good luck for that. The NCAA, whose main goal was to enforce college athletics, could not do it. This person will not be able to do it either, because there will be more litigation. And the real casualty of all this, I believe, is going to be the one part of college athletics that has grown so much. We watched the Women's World Series last night, $1 million pitcher, by the way, for Texas Tech. Women's sports, I think, is going to suffer from this, because if you're at one of these Ohio States or Alabamas and you're divvying up $20.5 million, you know where most of it's going. It's going to football. And that is really a major casualty. And there's also going to be more lawsuits. And this is a big moment, but it's anything but over.
Since you mentioned him, I will name him. MLB executive Brian Seeley, named CEO of the new College Sports Commission late last night. If you could give him one or two pieces of advice as he moves forward, what would you tell him?
Yeah, go to your local CVS and buy the biggest bottle of Advil you can find, because you are going to have more headaches than you've ever had before. And I hate to be a pessimist on a beautiful Saturday morning, Jay, but this sport is not fixable. As soon as this is settled, which of course it was last night, executives are going to Washington to keep pushing Congress to solve their own problems. College athletics did this to themselves. And they're not really suffering for it, because it's a $1 billion industry, but it's going to be very uneven in the future. And I think at some point, fans are going to start tuning out, because there is such an existential threat to what we grew up loving, and we still do. It's not going to be the same anymore.
Yeah, it's Paul Feinbaum with Jay Harris on ESPN. And to Feinbaum's point, there's another case, Johnson versus the NCAA. They are still deliberating whether athletes are employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act. And the NCAA is pushing for a federal bill asking Congress for antitrust protection. I mean, with the booster money, with the NIL, with the salaries that are coming in, I mean, Feinbaum's 100% right. The March Madness that we've enjoyed for all these years, the Valpos, the Butlers, that's over. And we saw that in the NCAA tournament this past year. We're going to see it in college football. The money is insane, what they get for television rights. They keep expanding the playoff. It's 12 now. It's going to go to 14. Before we know it's going to be 16. And it's only going to be the top schools, because financially you can't afford to do it. Now, what Indiana did this year was very curious. Can that happen again? Maybe. I don't know. Indiana's a Big Ten school. They got boosters. But reality is we're going to see a lot more of the Alabamas and the Texases and the Notre Dames. It just is what it is. And so it's professional sports. Will it ruin college athletics? It might. But will we stop watching? I don't know. That's going to be the key question. As long as the television ratings are good, I don't think anything is going to change. Quick thing as we shift the NHL Finals to Florida tonight. You may have heard about the plastic rats, which they're not allowed to throw on the ice during the game anymore, but if Florida wins, they'll throw them on the ice. If you're wondering where it came from, comes almost 30 years ago, 95-96 season, Florida's Scott Mellenby killed a rat in the old Miami Arena, scored 2 goals that night, and a teammate called it a rat trick. So fans picked up on that. They started throwing plastic rats on the ice after the Panthers scored goals in that season, and they went on to the Stanley Cup final in their 3rd year of existence. They were swept in the championship round by Colorado, with their goalie, Patrick Waugh, telling teammates no more rats, and after he gave up a goal in Game 3, they threw rats on the ice, plastic rats, but he shut them out the rest of the way, including 1-0 triple overtime in Game 4. So the NHL didn't like the cleanup of the plastic rats, so they said anybody who throws them on the ice could be subject. The team could be subject to a delay of game penalty. So they only do it after the games. When they won their first cup last season, They included a rat on the championship ring. They also picked up Brad Marchand from the Bruins in March, and his nickname is Rat. So keep an eye on that. As you know, in Detroit, they've been throwing the octopus on the ice for years. The octopus comes from the fact that you used to, it's not anymore because you got more rounds, but you used to have to win eight games to win the Stanley Cup. You used to have the conference final, and you go right to the final. Well, now they play like 16 rounds or whatever, so the octopus doesn't really work anymore. But the plastic rats, well, they live on in Florida. And if Florida wins tonight, you will see a bunch of rats thrown on the ice. Florida and Edmonton tied at a game. They play Game 3 tonight. Coming up, Shaquille O'Neal on the move of Inside the NBA from TNT to ESPN. Are they going to be messed with? It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Bram is coming up at 11 o'clock. So a lot has been said about the move of the Inside the NBA show from TNT to ESPN now that TNT no longer has the NBA, though, as Charles Barkley was trying to explain last week on the Dan Patrick Show, they're still going to do the Inside the NBA show with the four guys, but they're not going to have NBA highlights to work with. It's crazy, and all we know is it's a really good show. It has been a hands-off show on TNT. They have benefited from it greatly, whereas at ESPN, they like to have control, and they like to be able to tell you what to do. So apparently, the model for this is going to be very similar to the Pat McAfee show, and it's a show that's owned by TNT. That's what it sounds like, and ESPN is essentially buying it. And like the McAfee show, they don't mess with it. They let it do what it does, and if enough people are watching it, they keep it. If it gets too uncomfortable for them at some point, they'll get rid of it. And looks like they have a backstop on that with the Rich Eisen show. I'll get to more on that in a minute. But this was Eisen last week with Shaquille O'Neal about how much control he thinks ESPN is going to have with this show making the move there for the next NBA season.
I don't have concerns because I know one guy that you're never going to change, and I know another guy that's really close to him. So, the other two guys. Listen, Ernie is a consummate professional. Yeah. He can adapt to any situation. Ernie is the guy that really keeps us out of trouble, and Kenny is a professional. But Chuck is right there on the line, and I'm right below Chuck. So, Chuck's not changing. I'm not changing. I actually saw something yesterday where it said the ESPN is going to give us the same no look that they give Pat McAfee. So listen, we're just going to go have fun, do what we do, talk about the game that we love, and just try to make people laugh.
Well, yeah, and I'll just say this though, Shaquille. Very rarely do I say you and I have something in common, and I really haven't spoken about this on my show because I am in love with the Roku channel people, and I'm trying to be as respectful as possible, not talking about this on this program. But this show is moving to Disney in September as well, and we've been given the same assurances as I'm sure Pat has, and I would be stunned if in any way, shape, or form they try to change you or your show. There's a reason why you guys are who you are, and I would be surprised. You are who you are, and an institution, a total institution. And I'm so glad that you guys are staying put and together. Man.
Yes, the four horsemen live on.
For sure. And other than that, where else would we see you go to the bathroom live on television? Shaq, you know what I mean? Where else would we see that?
It was a number two. You know what?
Okay.
You remember that?
You coming clean?
Do you remember that song when you was little?
Of course. Yeah.
When you think it's in your head and it's running down your leg, diarrhea. Diarrhea.
And that's the kind of stuff that I guess will still be a part of the show. Now, Eisen comparing it to himself, Eisen's safe. ESPN, it's believed, in part took the show because if McAfee does get to be too much to deal with, they got something nice and safe to put in there. Now, he gets really good guests. He's in Los Angeles, so he's got that advantage. He's got a crew of people he's been working with for a while, some chemistry there. But it's not anywhere near as risque as the McAfee show, which is going to run in the same time slot. So they got an option there if things get out of hand. So, Eisen comparing his situation to leaving the Roku channel for ESPN is a little bit different than the one here. Now, Candace Buckner wrote about this in the Post over the weekend. She's got some good points here. She says some of the biggest imitators of the show Inside the NBA are found on NBA podcasts because it seems the majority of empty calories and sports prop up in NBA conversation. Absolutely. We do this all the time. Everybody does it. Well, is he the GOAT? Is he the greatest? Is he better than Jordan? Is he better than LeBron? Who cares? But that's what we do all the time. So, yes, empty calories, a good way to describe it. She says it's not just that the discourse feels negative rather than celebratory, a complaint among some current players. The talk is often so shallow. How is this guy going to be able to play in the golden age? Or that guy needs to step up and score 30 a night. Boy, she's 100% spot on that. Maybe the average NBA fan has a weak palate for substance, explaining why the most popular podcasts feature ex-pros offering little about the NBA game, just spoonfuls of dated takes and sophomoric jokes. Or perhaps the success of Inside has influenced sports broadcasting too much. Inside was gold, but the show was intended as entertainment, not education about the game. Kendrick Perkins, a former player and now a paid analyst for one of the league's broadcast partners, ESPN, even called out Inside the NBA for his casualness around the league it covers. Obviously, they don't watch basketball, Perkins said back in April. But Perkins' opinion, shared only a few months ago, rang with truth. Inside pulled off the irreverence and even ignorance because the co-stars and their unmatched chemistry. In the wrong hands, however, we're left with former jocks just spilling tea from their glory days or mispronouncing the names of current somebodies. And yet, that hasn't stopped analysts or networks they work for from trying to produce the inimitable and creative bad dupes that feel like Gucci's found at the flea market. That is spot on. That is spot on. And as good as they are, as good as the chemistry that they have, that's the gold standard now, and that's what everybody tries to recreate. But you have, as Shaq said, the ultimate professional in Ernie Johnson, keeps it on track. Barkley, who's the best thing on television. Kenny Smith, who's a solid analyst, doesn't get rattled by the other two. And then Shaq and Barkley fighting. Well, that was developed over time, and it was spilled out over a period of time. First, you had Ernie and Kenny, which was fine, former player, analyst, and a pro host. Then Barkley retires first. He joins the show. Okay, things get spiced up. And then Shaq retires, and he joins. But you just can't snap your fingers, throw in a few ex-jocks, and hope it works out. And so I think that's what ESPN found as well. They went, well, we've been trying to recreate this. We got Stephen A., we had Magic for a while. They've had a number of ex-players in there. Jalen Rose was in there for some time. They couldn't do it. So they said, hell, well, we're just going to buy it. And that's what they're doing. They're buying that. Baseball note, the Paul Skeens, and this was actually we had a little segment on this last week in discussing how little support that he gets. And Jason Stark, who used to be with ESPN and now is with The Athletic, said it's basically roster malpractice that the Pirates are producing right now. And yesterday, Paul Skeens went 7 2/3 innings against the Phillies. He gave up one unearned run on 2 hits with 7 strikeouts and 1 walk. Comes out of the game's tied 1 apiece, and didn't get any decision here. He remained 4-6 in his second year. His ERA is 1.88. 1.88. That's how little support he got. And he is the best pitcher in baseball, yet he is 1-4 in his last 8 starts, even though he's given up just 5 runs in 42 1/3 innings over the past 6. Pittsburgh has averaged 3.3 runs in his 14 starts. He's 0-2 in 3 games where he's gone into the 8th, despite allowing 3 runs total, only 2 of them earned. And he's not complaining. He's under contract. He knows he's 23 years old. The reality is he's not going to be in Pittsburgh that much longer because much like Juan Soto, when they have that much time left under team control, he's more and more valuable. So they're not going to spend any money. The Pirates don't do that. They're certainly not going to give him a second contract because he's going to have one of those, if he continues to pitch like this, $600 million plus, maybe $700 million. They're not going to pay that. So he just, smile, do what you can, go out there, keep your ERA low, and he'll be gone. And anybody who's a Pirates fan and thinks that Paul Skeens is in their long-term future, they're kidding. They're kidding about it. Now, apparently it's not affecting him mentally. He's going out there and making start after start after start. But you look at his ERA, 1.88, and you go, he's 4-6? How can he be 4-6? Well, he's 4-6 because the team stinks and they don't produce any runs for him. And, that's sort of where things stand. The Orioles coming home, they're 12 games under 500. It's almost the middle of June. It doesn't look like the miracle turnaround that the Nationals had in 2019 is going to happen for them. So you might chalk this up. And the interesting thing to watch here is what new ownership does, how they handle this, because you have not heard from David Rubenstein in weeks, and you've already seen the manager fired. What about the future of the general manager? We'll have to see. And the Nationals, well, hard to predict them because they go out on a road trip and they score runs like crazy, 38 runs in 4 games, and now all of a sudden they come home and they can't score a run. Hard to predict what's going on with them. But they got 3 games against the Mets. That'll be this week, and then they're back home again this weekend. So that's it. We got game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals tonight, and we'll have to wait until Wednesday until we get to game 4 of the NBA Finals. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at mini camp, as it's a mandatory mini camp for the Commanders opening up, and other things that may or may not develop. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.